community. There are waivers listed in here. If you don't understand or don't know if the person has any of these services, it's fine just to put not applicable, an NA in it. The purpose of the form is to get as much information as you can, to trigger some areas that you might not think of, and to document that information that you do find in a logical manner so that all of it leads to a defensible recommendation for whether or not this person needs CBAS services. The next section, recent healthcare encounters. Of course, this is the basis for likelihood of problems occurring in the future. Are they likely to deteriorate? Have they had problems falling? Have they been to their doctor frequently? Is their blood pressure out of control? Do they visit the emergency room a lot? Any kind of situation where they've had a healthcare encounter that would indicate that there is a problem and they are seeking repeated help for it and not seem to be getting that help. On page 5, it starts in part 2, and this is where the qualifying criteria come into effect. This is kind of a conglomeration of what you got as information from part 1. Now you're starting to put it into part 2, into the qualifying criteria to make up the different parts of the criteria that help the person or indicate that the person needs CBAS services. The first one, of course, are the basic qualifications or the eligibility criteria, more or less. The second piece, other chronic or post-acute conditions. These are all straight out of the Welfare and Institution Code criteria, 14525. We've tried to make it more user-friendly so that it's a simple statement that you're answering, yes or no. That leads you to the next box, the living situation.
Can I jump in for just one sec? I'm highlighting and trying to draw attention to this just to make sure that everybody sees that. On the left-hand column, under each of these items, there are cues that you can follow that will help you to see whether how the individual qualifies or they don't. So in other words, on the other chronic and post-acute conditions, it says yes or no, requires a yes for at least one choice. So if you hop over to the next column, either the individual has a condition or conditions that require monitoring, treatment, or intervention, yes or no, and if it's no, or they reside in an ICF DDH. So there has to be one yes there, and then there will be a yes that you would check on the left-hand column. So each of these items has a set of instructions like that goes along with it. At the top, it does the same thing. So it has to be, requires yes for all of the first 5 choices, or yes for the 6th choice. So I just want to draw everybody's attention to that. So there is a little bit of guidance that's provided in the form along the way.
Thanks. And it goes into the next piece where it then gets into the services, the core services that are needed on each day that the person attends. You've gotten all this assessment material, and now you're starting to put together an idea of what services this person needs so that they can remain in the community. And you've filled in the basic conditions and diagnoses, the medications, what kind of system problems they're having, gait issues, medication issues. Now you're starting to put in what is the professional nursing need that this person has. There's 5 choices for that. You need a yes in one of those 5 choices. They're listed on the same page, so they're all right there. But one of those boxes does need to be checked for yes, whether they've got some kind of issue that they need intermittent observation and assessment and monitoring for. There's a medication issue. If there's a communication issue that they need communication to the doctor about changes in blood pressure or blood sugars or any kind of condition change, that dementia seems to be increasing faster than was anticipated, that the person relays or the caregiver relays to you. That could be an instance that for number 3, personal care supervision, and then skilled nursing care and intervention. one of those 5 different nursing services does need to be checked. This is out of 14550.5. And again, these are the core services that need to be provided to the person on each day of attendance. And what you're doing here is kind of getting an idea of where this, the CBAS Center is going to serve to meet those needs that aren't being met currently, and the person will be able to remain in the community. The next 2 being personal care or social services, and then the therapeutic activities. If you can see that this person is arthritic, has a lot of balance problems, needs some maybe maintenance therapy or maybe some focused therapy on an issue, right or left-sided weakness, those are all part of the needs that the CBAS Center should be addressing when they do the individual plan of care. So now when you get to part 3, that becomes the categories that meet the CBAS criteria. You've kind of sketched an outline of the person, what their, what would you call it, their conditions, their diagnoses are, how they manifest those diagnoses or conditions, what their qualifying criteria is, where their needs are. They need some additional service so that they can remain in the community. Now you're putting it into where those diagnoses meet categories. Category 1 being the nursing facility level A, which kind of is, takes into a lot of different conditions and diagnoses, but there has to be some kind of medical necessity that goes with that, and hopefully you should have indicated that throughout the assessment process and in part 2 in the qualifying criteria. Category 2 through 5 list a more specific organic, acquired, or traumatic brain injury, chronic mental illness, Alzheimer's, dementia, a cognitive impairment, or individuals who have developmental disabilities. The person should fit into one of these categories, whether it be the category 1, the nursing facility level A, kind of the broad category, or the more individualized categories. For category 2 and 4, of course, there were the ADLs and IADL requirements. Those are both need additional. ADLs or IADL impact, have to have some kind of impact on. When we go over the criteria, again, we'll show you those bubbles where there are the 5 categories, but just bear in mind that 2 and 4 do require some type of an ADL or IADL compromise. We've structured out so that those 2 categories stand out with an additional and on them so that you see right away. And at the bottom is the does not meet the eligibility criteria for CBAS. And there will be some people that do not meet the eligibility criteria, but maybe you'll be able to identify a community service or resource that would be more appropriate to help prevent the person from deteriorating further, or maybe they just need some kind of social contact or some kind of link to a resource in the community. But there will be people that do not meet the criteria, so that it all should be obvious and defensible as you go through this CEDT, that when you come to the final page that it's an easy conclusion to reach. The last page of the form, other than the comment page, is the signature page. And for our field offices, we have a little different process. I'm not sure how the managed care plans do it, but the face-to-face assessor does the part 1. Part 2 and 3 can be done at the facility, but we impart no information onto the facility at the time that we're actually doing the assessment or finished with it. It does come back to the field office, and the reviewer goes through again, checks any final work, and makes the determination whether or not the person does or does not meet the criteria. Then her nursing supervisor looks at it again and sees if the criteria is correct, if the person does meet the criteria, and signs it off. If the person she feels does not meet the criteria, that there is a question of whether or not the person is at a level of such that CBAS is something indicated, and they disagree with what the face-to-face assessment was, there needs to be a complete rationale written in that comment section, and then the review, the CEDT tool itself goes to the field office supervisor for a final sign-off. But there needs to be a justification at each level of disagreement for why that person is not at that, it does not meet that CBAS criteria. And not so much what the person does not need, but what the person does not, maybe the conditions that indicate CBAS would be appropriate, but is not at that level of CBAS intervention yet. There are other resources that are available before CBAS becomes a necessary service.
Yeah, let me just jump in for a second, just say one of the things that we tried to incorporate from version 1 to version 2 here on the signature page was that this is a tool that's used both by the plans and by DHCS, and that there are different processes out there. And so we tried to acknowledge that. We got a lot of feedback from the participants in the work group saying it needs to be flexible enough to accommodate those plans and the field offices where they're going to always do a quality review, and it also needs to not imply that that's required for every individual. So the signature page, we built some flexibility in so that we have the first level, the person who's doing the face-to-face who makes the recommendation, and then for those plans or the field office, when a quality review is going to be taking place, they do that. For those that are not going to do it,